Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Short Sports Show. I'm your host, Daniel Short. Today we got a good episode. First of all, like you already heard from me in the beginning, here are my plugs. On Twitter, follow me on Twitter, the short at short_sports 24-7. Also on Facebook, the Short Sports Show. And if you miss any episodes, I got you covered. Go on YouTube, type in the Short Sports Show. See some of the episodes that you may have missed. Go ahead and give them a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, this episode, I'm going to talk recapping the NFL week, which is obviously week 1, and in the NCAA. You know, talking about, if you haven't heard last week's episode, make sure you go listen to that one. This is going to be mainly talking about how I was right about Miami and Florida, and also about University of Texas. But one quick thing, obviously, I started my show later on than I wanted it to, but I was talking about how Philadelphia's offense, the Philadelphia Eagles, how I didn't think it was going to be able to be right in the NFL. And obviously, I'm wrong. If you look at the score right now, Philadelphia has the lead 33-7 over the Washington Redskins. They have 352 total yards. 167 on passing, 185 on rushing, and I was wrong. Obviously, it's just week 1. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I had said in the beginning that the offense of the read option was not going to work as it did in college with at Oregon, being brought into the NFL. I didn't think it was going to work, and I'm wrong so far. I really thought Washington was going to have it really, really good, and they're struggling to start off the game. One quick notes that I got for the NFL week, let's start off first, is on Geno Smith and E.J. Manuel, their first 2 starts on the season, and both of them did pretty solid. Geno Smith led his team for a game-winning field goal, going for 24-38, 256 yards, a touchdown, and 1 pick, leading the Jets to an 18-17 victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And overall, he did really, really good. You see his percentage was real good against the team, and going in and playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I thought is defensively was going to be a lot more stacked than they were. They really struggled. Even though they kept them to a low score at 18, I believe they should have forced a lot more turnovers to a weak Jets team. And it shows the Jets, they're good. And obviously this is Geno Smith's team. As we all know, not even with the injury to Mark Sanchez, who's going to be out next week, Geno Smith will be the starting quarterback the rest of the season. Over on to E.J. Manuel. He did okay, not the best, but he kept up with one of the top teams last year in the past decade against the New England Patriots. He went 18 for 27, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and a 23-21 loss. Stats-wise, they weren't the best, but he did keep up with a New England team that has usually always dominated against the Buffalo Bills, and it shows E.J. Manuel is taking the right steps to lead the Buffalo team. He is the future for them. Beginning of the season, I didn't think he was their quarterback. I thought he was just going to be another quarterback that just went on the list, and 3 years from now is on a different team. This guy is got the potential to be the quarterback for the next 6 to 7 years, if not more, for the Buffalo Bills. He did very, very good against a New England team, but also New England, not taking any credit away from Buffalo, they put up a great fight. But for them to struggle, I saw the game, and maybe it looked like they do miss Aaron Hernandez at their tight end position. Obviously, it was just one player on the team, so should not affect them so much, but not for Tom Brady not to have Wes Welker, Aaron Hernandez, it's looking like the passing offense is not going to be at the top that it always has been. Julian Edelman stepped in, did a pretty solid job taking over Wes Welker's spot with only 79 yards and a touchdown. But this team has taken a step back and is looking like they really regret not re-signing Wes Welker and the misfortune that happened to Aaron Hernandez. Another game that stuck out in my mind was the Seattle Seahawks versus the Carolina Panthers. The Seahawks struggled against the Carolina Panthers very, very badly. For a team that has Super Bowl potential and is Super Bowl favorites, they sure did not play like that at all. Going against Carolina has a solid defense, is very underrated, and Cam Newton did pretty good against the Seahawks team. Ultimately, the Seahawks did get the win 12-7, but trailed the entire game until the last few minutes in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson did very good passing-wise, 25 for 33, 320 yards, a touchdown. Marshawn Lynch was not beast mode whatsoever in that game. Only for 17 carries for 43 yards, no touchdowns. Was not effective in that game whatsoever. They only had a total rushing yards of 70 yards in that entire game. Last year, they averaged more than 120 yards per game on the ground, and it was not there against, like I said, a good Carolina defense. But for a team that has so much potential, should have dominated this game from the beginning and didn't. They did held Carolina to 253 total yards on offense, which is very, very good. But then again, offensively, it should have been picked up a lot. And when I was watching them, I did not see a good spark in the team. And I think the main reason for that, and maybe it's not, maybe it's just me, but is the fullback that they let go was Michael Robinson. He also had a show on YouTube that was for the fans, and it was the Real Rob Report. Some of you may have heard of it. And he was their team leader on offense, and I'm not saying, the team captain, but was a guy that always was upbeat for the team. And I think they were missing a spark. They just came out flat against Carolina, and I think that it showed. But again, that could just be me. But who knows? But I think they do miss Michael Robinson, and obviously the blocking wasn't there with only 70 total yards on offense. Another game that was pretty good was 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers. 49ers pulling out a win. And one huge thing that was there was a huge target for the 49ers was Anquan Boldin. And before I get into it, remember in the offseason, Baltimore traded Anquan Boldin to the 49ers for a 6th-round draft pick. 6th-round draft pick for Anquan Boldin. And, in his first game has 13 receptions, 208 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, the 49ers got the best of that. But, I don't see why they needed to trade him. The offense obviously wasn't there for Baltimore when they played Denver on opening night on Thursday. And the 6th-round draft pick, let's see how far that gets them. Last night was a good game with the Cowboys and the Giants. One thing I saw was the Cowboys look like they're really solid. They should have took advantage. Giants were bad. And I don't know. The Giants gave up 6 total turnovers in that game. And David Wilson, the running back for the New York Giants, had 2 costly fumbles. One led to a touchdown. They both led to a touchdown, but one was actually recovered for a touchdown by Barry Church on the Dallas Cowboys. And they benched them after the second fumble. So they go out, and if you guys haven't heard, they go and try out Willis McGahee and Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs used to be a running back for the Giants before being let go to the San Francisco 49ers. But Giants, I think, are on a downturn. And again, it's just week one. You can't really say too much on it. But they struggled bad. But the other thing is the Cowboys did not capitalize as much as they should have. With forcing 6 turnovers, it was still a close game. Don't have the final score on me, but I think they only won by less than 8 points or so. And they should have been a blowout, basically. I mean, each of those turnovers should have turned into a touchdown. Few did, but they should have capitalized a lot better. But they're taking the right steps. Cowboys, very good rushing wise with DeMarco Murray, solid game. Also had a good catching out of the backfield. They're very solid. Offense is good. It's good. And Jason Witten, they couldn't not block, but they could not cover him whatsoever in the game. And Miles. Can't think of his first name. Miles had all the catches, majority of the catches throughout the first half and in the game for the Dallas Cowboys. Dez Bryant did not do the best. What was double coverage in the game the entire time. But Giants defensively still need a whole lot of help, and Cowboys offense is taking the right turns for this season. But basically, that was my recap for the NFL week. And not a whole lot of games were really stood out other than those. And obviously, the game that's happening right now with the Eagles and the Redskins shocked me. I was wrong. And I'm glad that happened now, because what I'm about to get into, I was right. And I'm going to start off with that. Like I said last week, and now I'm going to get into college football just for y'all to know. Like I said last week, University of Florida, the Florida Gators, are not a good team. The past 2 years, they have not. They've been overrated with high numbers in the AP poll and the BCS poll. They're bad. Last year, like I said in last week's episode, had 2 games, one against the FCS team and one against a very low FBS team. Struggled, and they were both at home, and they struggled. They had to win in the last minute. For University of Florida, those 2 games should have been a complete domination. Yet they struggled, and yet they were still kept in the top 5 of that during that time. Now, they played Toledo in week 1, and they struggled against them. They pulled out a 24-7 win. You'd think they dominated. You really watched the game. They struggled, both offensively and defensively. Last week, just a few days ago, they played Miami. And I said in that game, Miami would win. They would dominate the game. And I said Duke Johnson will have a great game. Now, Duke Johnson did not have the best game, and I'll repeat the stats that I said that I gave him that I predicted that he would have. I said he would have over 20 carries, which he did. He had 21 carries. I said he would have more than 190 yards, and he only had 59. So I was way off on that one. And I said he would have 2 touchdowns. He only had 1. So he's very ineffective in that game. I thought he would be a lot more explosive in the game, and was not. And Florida Gators did a good job handling him. But the rest of the other players on Miami, they didn't. Miami wins the game 21-16. And I said from the beginning, Miami would win. Florida is not good. Florida drops very, very low in the polls. And Miami takes a huge jump from being unranked to number 15 in the nation. And Miami's a great team. And that's why I knew Florida would lose. And I knew Florida is not a good team like people have said over the past 2 years. They're on the downturn. And Will Muschamp is on the hot seat for Florida if they cannot get better. And I don't think they will, especially playing the SEC teams that they play. Not saying they're going to go winless, but they're going to lose majority of those games, and they won't post above 500 record against the SEC. Another game that I predicted was BYU versus Texas. Texas was number 15 at the time, and I said, people were saying Texas played their first real test against New Mexico State and how they dominated. And I told you about Texas State, how they put up 66 points against New Mexico State. And, with Texas playing them and putting up 59, that wasn't a huge thing that was predicted. So Texas goes on the road to play BYU, and just to give up 550 yards on the ground. 550 yards. In most stats and in most games, 550 yards, if you give up that much, usually that's a total offense that you've given up to the other team. 550 yards. This was only rushing that they allowed 550 yards rushing on the ground to BYU, which is, they have a solid running game, but, not the best in the nation. That's something, imagine if they would have played Oregon. Imagine if Texas would have played Oregon. They never will, mainly because they're not that good to play them, and they will never schedule them. But imagine if Texas played Oregon. You might have a 1 in front of that 5. Now, that's a whole lot. But I'm just saying, if they've given up that many yards to a BYU team, imagine what they would have done against a real good team. And BYU is a good team, but I'm just saying, this is what Texas does. They play weak teams, and when they actually play a good team, they're not ready for it. And they got absolutely dominated in that game, losing 40-21, which led to the firing of Manny Diaz at defensive coordinator, who is not a good defensive coordinator at all. I don't know why they kept him when last year their main weakness on the defense was rushing. And the reason I know that, one, that's what it was always talked about, and that's what it was stat-wise. And also when TCU played Texas on Thanksgiving night, TCU, all they did was run in that ball game and end up pulling a victory out of that game on Thanksgiving night. So I didn't say that Texas would give up that many yards on the ground, but I did say Texas would lose in a good margin. They would lose to BYU, and they did. So that was just one thing that I had to get out there. I don't like TU, and basically, that was all I had to say about that. Another thing that I predicted, I was talking about Devin Gardner, a quarterback from Michigan, and I said that he was not good, not a quarterback that was going to lead Michigan to win a whole lot of ball games. And it looks like I'm just wrong on that. They played Notre Dame at Michigan, and it was going to be the last time Notre Dame would play Michigan at Michigan in the next few years, and he did very, very good. That was 21 for 33, 294 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. His main receiver was last name was Galloway, and Devin Gardner's solid. He's very, very good. Okay, those are two different things, but he did really, really good against a Notre Dame defense that is their strength for that team. And, I said he wasn't good and that he wouldn't lead the team. And he proved me wrong and proved a lot of other people wrong, or proved a lot of people right. So props to Devin Gardner in Michigan for the win. And I was wrong about that. Another thing in college was the Baylor offense. And that's one thing I want to talk about because Baylor's getting a lot of recognition for their offense, leading the nation with over 790 yards per game on offense. And if you look at the two teams that they have played, majority of the top FBS teams would have put up the exact same amount of yards and points. Their first game they played Wolford, an FCS team, and then the second game they played Buffalo. Exactly. Now, Baylor's a very good offensive team. They have been over the past few years, and obviously starting with Robert Griffin and Nick Florence last year, who led the Big 12 in passing yards, was top 10 if not top 5 in the nation in passing yards. And this year it looks like they're going to do the same thing. with the top offense, but not yet. I don't think people should start getting too excited about Baylor and how, they're going up and all this other stuff, because they're not playing a real team until October 12th, which is, a month and 3 days from now, when they're at K-State. And again, that's K-State is a solid team when they're at home, and I can't really say that they lost to North Dakota State, but going to play at K-State is a hostile environment, and that'll be the real first test. And K-State's obviously not as good as they were last year, and will not be, but their first 6 to 7 ball games are against very weak teams. But for sure, the real first test will be when they play Oklahoma. They do have Oklahoma at home, but again, that won't even be to November 7th. So you're basically looking at Baylor being most likely at that time when they play Oklahoma being in the top 15, maybe even the top 10 at undefeated and having a very top offensive game. And stat-wise, they're, I don't think they'll still average 700 yards by that point, but they're going to average way over 500 yards and average a whole, maybe more than 40 points per game. But I just want people to know where I stand, and just so not a lot of people are talking about. People are talking about how Baylor's, their offense is being at the top notch, but I just want to make sure people know where they're really at and who they've really played, so people don't think, Baylor's the next Oregon or stuff like that. One quick thing that I did see on about yesterday, I don't know if it happened yesterday or the day before, but a UCLA wide receiver, Nick Pascal, was killed after being struck by a vehicle. He was a redshirt freshman. He was a standout in high school. Was a walk-on about 2 years ago. But the coach said that he had a promising future, and in the next few years he would have been one of their top receivers. UCLA is going to honor him by wearing a patch, wearing his number on their helmet. He was 20 years old, and just want to give condolences to his family. But it's sad to see a top receiver, especially at UCLA, go down. My next segment was basically what to look for tonight. I was planning on doing the show earlier, but a few things came up. Earlier I would have said, when I was going to talk about Philadelphia and Washington, I was going to say how Philadelphia's offense was not going to be there, how Washington was going to blow Philadelphia away, and final score was going to be Washington 34 to Philadelphia 17. And right now, it might be the opposite. So I was wrong about that. But we still have one more game coming up, which is in about 15 to 25 minutes or so. Houston at San Diego. One quick thing I want to talk about for Houston and San Diego. Yesterday, the blackout was lifted for the people in San Diego. And the reason I bring that up is, as a San Diego fan, the fans of San Diego don't want the Chargers to leave. They say, you have a fan base here and this and that. But when the Chargers bring up or in the topic of being brought up to leave to go to Los Angeles, which I believe they should do, San Diego starts saying, you have a fan base here, don't leave. When they stay, we have multiple games that are being blackout because they're not being sold out. And Qualcomm Stadium is not in the best of shape. So San Diego is looking, they will relocate for sure. It's just whether they stay in San Diego, they go to San Jose, or they go to Los Angeles and get a better stadium somewhere. I believe they should move to Los Angeles. It bring more people to go to the games. It bring more excitement, get the players, maybe boost the morale of the team, because, the past few years they've been struggling. Los Angeles is obviously a lot better than going to San Diego, mainly by name-wise, and also it could help in free agency. Players saying, hey, do you want to go to Cleveland or do you want to go to Los Angeles? Huge difference. So that's one quick thing. But for what I see for tonight, what to look for Houston and San Diego is, well, for San Diego, a huge loss. It sucks that this game has got to be on Monday night. This couldn't be on a regular Sunday game and not where the entire nation's going to be watching. But Houston, Arian Foster's not going to have a whole lot of carries in this game. So hopefully Ben Tate does, because I got him on my fantasy, and I need some points, because if not, I'm going to lose. That's besides the point. But San Diego's rush defense was number 6 in the league last year, so probably not going to have a whole lot of success on the ground. But with Arian Foster, if he still plays like he did last year, without the injuries, then, that could be worthless for that stat. Passing wise, San Diego's secondary is just terrible. Just bad. They have no depth at that position. And, I see Matt Schaub throwing for more than 400 yards. Andre Johnson and Hopkins, a rookie wide receiver out of Clemson, having a big game. So I see Houston just lighting up the scoreboard while San Diego's trying to figure out where they're really at for this upcoming season. The thing I do like about San Diego is, with Coach Mike McCoy being brought in from Denver, is his play calling. His play calling is phenomenal. Him and Ken Whisenhunt have done a really good job with creating plays. The bad thing is, when you don't have an offensive line that can block for more than 3 seconds, it's really hard to get a good play in. And so San Diego, there's a bright spot with the coaching, but it's not gonna work. Nothing's gonna work when you don't have an offensive line. And even with drafting DJ Fluker out of Alabama, what I saw in preseason was him not being that good. He was very, very weak, getting beat a whole lot. And again, he's just a rookie, but I was not happy with what I saw and what we could have got out in the draft instead of him. He's a good guy. I've seen his interviews, but we need a whole lot more talent on that offensive line, and it's got to be something we're going to have to address even after the season's over. And secondary and offensive line is going to just be a must. And when I saw Denver play against Baltimore and just absolutely dominate in that game, it gets me kind of worried on how San Diego's going to do against them, and I just hope it's not another 7-touchdown performance by Peyton Manning. But those are all the quick things that I wanted to hit for tonight's episode. I'm doing good on my timing. Got 1 minute and 40 seconds, so yes, good things are happening. Again, I started off kind of weird. Sorry about that. Still out of breath. I just got out of work. Anyways, that's besides the point. Again, follow me on Twitter at short_sports24-7. Also, follow me or like whatever the term is for Facebook. Just search in the Short Sports Show, give it a like, follow me from there. And if you missed this episode or any other episode, go on YouTube. And even if you heard this episode, like right now or any other time, and you heard all the other episodes, go ahead, go on YouTube, type in the Short Sports Show, and like and subscribe every single video, or just subscribe to my channel and like every video, because it helps me out, helps my channel grow out, helps me get to a wider audience, which brings in a bigger family, and that's really cool, and a lot more people that I can either have on my side and agree with me or argue. Either way, it's still going to be fun. Again, hope you guys watch the game. Well, actually, don't watch the San Diego game. Do that. Do me a favor. Don't watch that game. Just because it'll make me happy. Unless you see on your phone and it says San Diego up by 30 points. Not even. Because we did that against Denver and we still lost. And we cheated in that game too. Again, those points. The life of a San Diego Charger fan. See what I got to go through. Anyways, thanks guys for listening. listen next week on Friday. Hopefully, Friday, 6 o'clock Pacific time.